Okay. There we go. That's, of course, the boys from Anderton's. That's the clip that I used. Delightfully, it did not get video demonetized. So though I thought it was a great version, I guess the AI didn't think it was a perfect version worthy of demonetization. And now I'm saying all this, and of course the computer, the boys will probably pick that right up. Everybody's asking, yeah, that's Lemmy in the top left, Jay. So I'll come back over to the chat on the side. As always, I'm going to try to cover some of the things that I didn't cover in the first video. I need to thank everybody for being here. Of course, I need to thank BV Ninja for stepping in and moderating. Everybody who knows Phil as my usual moderator, Phil is healthy and happy, but he's simply internet impaired down at his new place in Florida. We expect him to be back at the beginning of next year. He is missed, but I take consolation in knowing that he has my Rosewood Eric Johnson Strat to keep him company. So Phil, if you're watching this, we know, and we miss you, big guy. So we have the moderator of the stars, BB Ninja, the guy that keeps the boys on that pedal show, marathon live streams, on their feet. So we all need to thank BB, and probably a lot of you folks know BB. I'm seeing a lot of people drop into the chat. It's great. This video has done very well, so I imagine we should have a good crowd today. So yeah, you might have noticed we got some new lights. We got blue light back here. It's like all moody. If there's some new changes, I got a new shock going back. If the glasses are one step too far, we can go back to the glasses. You know, I know change is hard for all of us. It's hard for me, and I control it to a certain extent. So it's right there. Anyway, so yeah. So that's that's that. We can fix that. There we go. So remember to hit that. Think about joining the Friends of 5 Watt. There's 3 levels. I got 50, 10, and $5 a month. Tremendous support and really enjoy the live streams that I do with the guys there, guys and gals, folks that I do there. BB has the store link in the chat already, but it's in the description as well, as well as the Patreon link. And the Short History Season 1 bundle is still on discount, so grab that if you still wanted that to see those special features that I did for all those videos. If the 18 hours of video isn't enough, and you just have to have those extra 10 or 15, 20 minutes that I did after each of the videos and captured those. They're a lot like this. They're more casual, but it is what it is. So it's very cool stuff, and folks that have bought it have really told me they're really enjoying it. So if you like what we're doing, just think of a way to keep us going, and thanks in advance. Like I said in a recent video, you guys are 5 Watt World. I help build the community, but you are the community, and I just make the videos, and I'll just keep doing that. Okay, so the Ric video has had about 85,000 views in a week, so it's in YouTube parlance, it's right up there at the top of the last few videos that we've done. About 85,000 views. We had 824 comments before I looked before the stream, and about probably 10% of those were folks that were clarifying for me that their 1960s car knowledge is better than mine, and certainly better than my memory of 1960s cars. So the car that I was trying to remember, because I reached out to my brother, Brian, and talked to him. I'm like, so what year, I didn't remember since then. There was no such thing as a Ford Rambler. My family owned a Rambler, an AMC Rambler. My brother owned a 1961 Ford Falcon, and I had it up. It's one of the things about the timer slide is it works best if you have something else there first. So I had, when I think about the car that Brian had, it makes me think like it felt like this amazing hot rod Falcon. But the reality is the car probably was a lot more like this. And the part I love about this photograph is that you can just make out the tow chain at the front of the car from the back of yet another old vehicle, an old pickup truck. So I think that's really wonderful. So those are the Falcon. That's the Falcon part of the story. I really appreciate it when people jump in and help me out. I try not to take offense. My memory, as I joked in this video, is what it is. It's just what I remember. And as far as which Rush 8-track it probably actually was, since it was 77, like I said, I was a junior in high school. Brian's about 18 months older than me. So if I was 17, he'd have his car. That would have been probably the 2112 record that came out in 76. So that would be my best guess for what we actually were listening to when John J. Trem's pointing out that my hair is getting taller. It's just I'm kind of giving in to what the hair wants to do. I'm sick of fighting my hair. Just let it go. Let it go today. So it's all these changes. I know it's hard for you guys. Get a beverage and we'll do the best we can. I'll get back to your stream. You guys are distracting me as always. The other thing about the videos when I do these, everything doesn't fit. And so inevitably, actually, it's pretty funny. The last two short histories I made, actually, once I finished the last minute editing, came out completely by chance at 25 minutes on the nose. I'm about as obsessive compulsive as the next guy, though I do know the definition of obsessive compulsive disorder. There's a reason, but the reality is I don't need it to be that tidy. It was a fluke the first time, it was a fluke this time, and I love it that there are people out there that notice that kind of detail, minutia in the comments, because that dropped into the comments. I thought that was pretty funny. But everything doesn't fit. I'm trying to keep the thing, I film a script that maybe write a script and then film it. It's about, 45 minutes long. And then carving it down to the size that ends up getting produced and put out, even after I add music clips and stuff, I think improves it. Well, I think obviously it improves it, and inevitably things get lost. And the two basses that were most frequently missed, I'd say three maybe. The third one actually makes an appearance, but I didn't spend time talking about it. Was the double neck that Geddy Lee played with Rush when those guys were playing double and triple, neck guitars to be able to do the crazy prog tunes that they were doing. So that black double neck that he had, I think it was called a 40-80-12, if memory serves. You guys, I'm sure, will help me out. The other two basses that really, three actually. Well, we're up to four. So the Rickenbacker 4002. It was a mid-70s bass. I actually have an image. Let me go there because you guys seem to know what it is. Let me pull this up. That's a 4002. So this was a bass that they did. You can see it has it was a very fancy bass at the time. I don't know how big the screen you're looking at it on. It actually is checkerboard binding, has an unusual pick guard and volume and tone for both. The interesting thing is that the pickup placement on the 4002s was based on the location of pickups on a Fender Jazz bass in relative to the scale, so that there was that. And it was a Rico sound output, had a fully bound maple neck. But it also, I think, it looks at, and this picture and the stuff I've read said that obviously it's a neck through, but also it's an ebony fingerboard on those basses. They were the fanciest ones. And I think I read in like 1976 that bass listed for $1,250, and it just didn't make it through the cut. The other two basses, I think I've got a picture of the last one. Yeah, I do. So I just didn't write it up. The other ones are the 4004s. Now the 4004s, actually, you can see them in a couple of different forms. This is one, and it's got, I'm not sure these pickups are both original, but it's got a toaster in the neck, and it's right up against the neck fretboard. And then, let's see, is that what I got up there? Yeah, the 4004. And then they did two basses. One was called the Laredo and one was called the Cheyenne. And I think this is a Laredo. This is from my good friends at Guitar Point in Germany. It's a vintage dealer that's attached to Thomann. I've never been. I've never talked to them on the phone. I just use their photos all the time. They do beautiful photography, and they always send me a nice thank you. And the last thing that people took exception to was the fact that I said that the 8-string and the 5-string were still in the catalog. I think that phrasing implied for people that the instrument had been continuous in the catalog. It actually was in the catalog, dropped, and is back in the catalog in a pretty different form. This is the 4003-5 that's currently being built, and it has these unusual shaped pickups. This is a photograph from my buddy Dave Rogers at Dave's Guitars in Wisconsin. It's an endorsement to the extent that I think those guys are amazing, and Dave has always been really kind in sharing photographs of the instruments that he has in his massive collection in his museum there at the main store. And Tim Mullally, the photographer for them, has worked with me on a couple of videos. Those guys are the best. So I wanted to include all of those pieces. I think that ends the slideshow. And those are the guitars that didn't make it in that I wished had. They're really beautiful instruments. Like I said, I kind of have a self-imposed 30-minute timeline, and honestly, if I can keep it around 25, I just think they're more digestible. Anyway, so let's that's our standard 10-minute intro. Let's see if we can't go say hi to some folks in here. And everybody's talking about cars. Of course you're talking about the cars. Everybody who can remember those cars, guys who are my age or younger even. Oh, I skipped over something. The pickup placement, supposedly the pickup placement on Lemmy's first custom Ric 4003 Rics were based on the, let me get this right here, on the 4004 pickup placement. That the pickup placement on that was the inspiration for Lemmy's custom model. There, I'll add that in, and you guys can tell me if I'm right or wrong. That was something I read on an antiquated musician's friend site piece. So, all right, Kreenar's here, John's here, Neil. Relevant information. I love that. And yeah, the blue light is my rock and roll kind of moment here. I appreciate that. And hey from Boston, Canton, Georgia. David Casson, the artist and guitarist, ladies and gentlemen, is here. Let's see. People doing shout outs for the cars. Michael Burke from the UK. Guppy Bill, of course. Southern Oregon. People loving the bass pictures. Eric Warrington, hey, how you doing? Late to the party as usual. I actually, was on Zach Child's live stream helping out yesterday. Well, just dropping in and making noise. And then I was at Jeff's live stream early because I was moderating and people were teasing me because I'm always showing up at Jeff's live stream late, but he's amazing. So, always want to be on there. Michael D8393 is reminding us that Lemmy had Gibson Thunderbird pickups in his old Rics. That's my understanding too. I think I mentioned that in the video, although I'm not sure he had it in both positions. I saw any number of pictures where it looked like there was a Thunderbird pickup in the neck, but maybe it was a traditional one in the bridge. Barbarian Blood said he's got a 4,000 copy. Did you carve the top like Lemmy's? That would be cool. I had a friend who had a 1968 jazz bass that in the mid 70s was like some custom color to boot. And in the mid 70s, he had a friend and herbal and how should I put this? Herbal digesting friend. I don't know how to put that. I give up. So anyway, he had a friend carve the top of his 68 jazz bass. But since he's still playing it like that, and he always thought it was really cool, had flowers all over it, kind of like the Lemmy thing. It's how can you knock it? The guy's doing just that. So it's very cool. Keith Dooley's asking me, hey Keith, I got a message from Keith earlier today on my Patreon group, asking me if I'd seen Geddy Lee's big book, a beautiful book of basses. I hadn't seen it. I don't own it. I actually just sold off a lot of my library. The only books I mostly still have are sporting lit stuff that I'd collected that I'm going to give to a friend of mine, and then the piles of books that are the basic guitar library. So I didn't have that. My big splurge this last year was the Telecaster Blackguard book, and then I got a good deal on Jimmy Page's anthology. So those were my big price that. Let's see. Hey Reed, how you doing? Reed Dillashaw, folks. Tim, the world's okayest guitar player is here. Hey Tim. What's Keith? Did you mean what's up, Keith? We're having a conversation for everybody. Troy's Control Room. My 4003 is signed by Alex Lifeson. It was a gift from my fiance. Oh my God! I think everybody here bows down to you, man. That is very impressive. That is very, very impressive. Sam A.C. Smith from Brooklyn. Joe C. Ostrander, Ohio. I don't know where Joe Ostrander, Ohio is, Joe. Zakia Cassian says, Sean, are you going to do a Hofner 501 brief history? I don't know who Sean is, but Keith is going to do a Hofner Beetle bass. Absolutely going to do a short history on those at some point. So McJames was helping out, cutting through the euphemisms to the ultimate euphemism. Yeah, I think there was weed involved back in the day. But I'm not Dave Chappelle. I can't talk about this kind of stuff, with impunity, even though it is a memory of the 70s, and it was the 70s. That's all. That's usually what I say. Well, it was the 70s. Such and such doesn't remember. Hey, it was the 70s. So. Eric Warrington makes a mean brisket myself. Good. That's good. See, he's a pit master. I think we've talked about this before. Anyway, Steve Barry says, what's the weight of a typical 4003, say, versus a Fender J or a P? So this is funny. I was looking up these basses earlier today, and on it seems like on websites where they're selling them, new ones, it says that they average 8 pounds. And what I've read in other places in the Rickenbacker books and stuff, it says that they average closer to maybe 10 pounds. I think an 8-pound bass is pretty similar to Fender J or P. I think we'd all agree that most pieces of maple, which you're talking about a maple instrument, most pieces of maple are going to be heavier than pieces of alder, or certainly ash-bodied. But I think most of those P&Js are alder-bodied guitars. One of those, I should have mentioned it, one of those two basses that didn't make it into the video, I think the 4000, I got to find it here. I think the 4004s were made with just maple and walnut that was sustainably farmed. They were really early to the party on that. Yeah, the 4004, sculpted from solid maple and walnut, complemented by an eastern maple neck running the full length of the bass, 2 humbucking pickups, etc. Yeah, so I think that's exactly what I missed saying that. Let's see. Oh, we got questions. Good. Aresta Moroni says, did John Entwistle and Pete Quaife play a Rickenbacker? If so, what model? I touch on John Entwistle playing. He played the hollow body models. I think those were the 4005s. My memory of this is a whole week old. I don't know who Pete Quaife is. You guys are going to have to jump in and save me. BB knows all the answers to every question I don't know. That's for sure. Or Zach. I can always get Zach on the line, although he's not a Rick scholar. Also, Orester wants to know, did Rick make 6-string basses and 8-string basses? I know they make 8. They've made 8-string basses. I haven't seen a Rick 6 in my wanderings, but again, the bass players here probably can answer that better than I could. I know they do the 8-string. They made them in the 80s and then they into the 90s, and then they make them again now. Most people don't care for that oversized headstock to make the 8 strings work, but the look is just the look. Lloyd Walker says, what year did they move the neck pickup closer to the bridge on the 4001? This is like a quiz show here. I touch on that in the video, and I don't remember the specific year. It moves a half an inch closer to the bridge, and they changed the pick guard by a half an inch at the same time to accommodate it. My memory tells me it was like the mid-70s, but I would have to go look it up in the video script. So next one, Joe C says, "What's a good starter bass for the blues?" Boy, it's pretty hard to go wrong with the Squire, either a jazz or a P bass. You can really kind of do everything. Anthony Mutharaja is a YouTuber and bass teacher, jazz musician, pop cover musician, lives in Dubai. Last time I knew Anthony still lived in Dubai. He played the bass parts, wrote and played the bass parts for the jazz bass video that I did, Short History I did. Anthony played a 4-string Squire, white Squire with a tortoiseshell pickguard, until he only very recently, bought a custom 5-string. And that was his bass, period. He played that bass for years. I don't even think he swapped out the pickups. So I would tell you, Joe, that you'd be hard-pressed not to do well. Or, the classic PJ. They make basses with a P bass pickup in the traditional position, and then a J bass pickup down in the neck, down in the bridge position. So, Juju UK 68 says we should give a big shout out to all the Rickenbacker bands like the Jam, Paul Weller with his 330s, Bruce Foxton with his basses, possibly the Beatles on occasion. It's an English thing. That's interesting. That was my whole misunderstanding about Rickenbacker when I was a kid, was that there were these bands coming out of Europe that were using them. And then the funny part is, even bands later like Tom Petty and the Heartbreaker used Ricks a lot. And the interesting part of that story is that Tom Petty actually kind of couldn't get traction in the United States and went to England for a tour and blew up there. And then that sort of gave them momentum to do it back in the States, playing Ricks, basically doing their best Beatles in every way they could, really. John Roshner says he also took the finish off a 66 Olympic white P bass. Who'd have thought in the 70s that they would be worth something? Yeah, I mean, like my buddy's 68, I think it's a 68 Jazz. You didn't think that was going to be worth it. It was just a used guitar. It wasn't even new. It wasn't before relics and all that kind of stuff. Why are all the colors called glow? I looked, Krista, for that everywhere, and I didn't see the answer. I kind of really was delighted when I was doing the Gretsch videos by the wonderful sort of quirky marketing internal to the company. And I have to believe that that is all coming from sort of that group. Although I'm thinking, so I guess we could probably blame it all on FC Hall, because the glow, all right, somebody help me out. I don't think the glow finishes, the naming of those finishes, came until after FC Hall bought the company in the mid-50s. I'm trying to think, who I need is my buddy from Paris who collects Ricks, because he would know the answer to this. Maybe we'll get Dave on here a little later. So, Pete Quaife with the Kinks. Oh, man, that's impressive. Okay. Evan Ogden says, are you officially an exclusive Strandberg user at this point? I'm not exclusive. It's not. It is a good relationship. It's a wonderful. They're the guitars that I play. I guess there's a whole stack of them back there. There's the 3 guitars that I mainly own. I have a 4th guitar, which is a Gibson ES 390 that they made for a couple of years. It's a small body 330, fully hollow guitar that I think of as my jazz guitar. And these actually sound very different. The ash body Esquire setup sounds very different than the semi-hollow red one with the humbuckers, which is sort of my Robin Ford guitar, though, of course, him on a telly on the back pickup, he can make the thing sound just as fat, I think, as all the best Les Pauls he has ever owned. The blue guitar in the middle is... that's a complicated story that we're going to talk about in a future video, but I'm actually having a blue one like that put together with Strat pickups. So let's see here. What other questions we got? So not really an official one. Ola keeps making noise about sending me a Bowden, one of the new Bowden classics. I think that I'm sort of a weird traditional player in a shreddy kind of metal world that is Strandberg. And honestly, I've really enjoyed the community. I like everybody that I've met through Strandberg. Per Nielsen is one of the most amazing living musicians in the world, in my opinion, and at the same time, he's funny as hell. So, and no one's heavier than Per. I mean, you don't get the phone call to tour with Meshuggah if you can't keep up, and he certainly can. So. Gerson Alva says, "Did you change the camera? This is much better." I changed cameras months ago. No, yeah, like last winter. The big difference is I've got a new big light. I finally caved and bought one of the new LED aperture lights and a big softbox. So what you're really seeing is lighting. And the most recent video is the same thing. The camera is a Lumix S5. It's a great $2,500 camera. I mean, it's a really expensive camera for my little world, but it's tremendous. It doesn't overheat. It'll do a live stream like this on power and HDMI output. I can save the settings, so they're great. Reach out to me by email if you ever want to talk gear, the kind of stuff that I use to actually build the videos and stuff. I'm always willing to help with that. Otto von Flandermaus, how are things? Everybody's getting on the haircut. I know it. You guys are you're very observant. That's why I like you. Bass player from the Kinks, Peter Alexander, Greenlaw Quaife. See, BB, you're the man. Hey, Carol Shields, everybody. Yeah, I'll bet that was a real noise. A bass being carved in the 70s, all right. Yeah, I actually, John Woofer, I used to own an Ibanez Sound Gear bass as well, a 5-string. I love the sound of a bass playing the melody. And yeah, I don't own a bass right now. I play bass parts when I get around to recording them with an octave down sound and a guitar, which I picked up from John Cordy. Everybody, if you're not following John Cordy, John's amazing, has an amazing channel, quirky, wonderful sense of humor, one of my favorite guitar players. Got married yesterday. So when you see him or run into him, tell him congratulations for me. Alex Len says he bought a 4003 last year. The selling point for him was that it now has the V2 bridge. Big improvement, special price. Can you do a brief history on the Mosrite Ventures guitars, please? Alex, you're actually in line behind one of my most stalwart supporters in the Friends of 5 Watt, who has some Mosrite guitars in his music room in beautiful glass cases. I think they're originals. So yeah, that's been on my list for a while. And I wouldn't have told you that that a video about that guitar would do well, particularly because it's sort of offbeat enough. But the Dan Electro video did really well, and I don't think that's solely due to the fact that there's so many of them in the world. There weren't so many of them in the world till they started building them in the 90s as repros. Scott Bogfoot from Newfoundland, everybody. Tim, the world's okayest guitarist, puts his vote in for the Hofner short history as well. Rolando Vasquez says, does anyone know the production numbers on the Lefty 4001 or 4003 in the late 70s and 80s? Made to order, or were they mass produced by number? Wow. That's a great question. I've talked to people who had no problem getting somebody at Rickenbacker on the phone. They're still not a really very big company. It's kind of like I feel when I talk to the guys at Strandberg, or Zach works for True Tone. You can really run a company these days with so many sort of Lego-like IT support things with a very small number of people. I've been dealing with Victory while I've been testing this VC35, and they sent me a smaller cabinet to try. The same thing. It's just really wonderful, small, company, and great to be able to be in touch with somebody directly. Okay, my thing just did a jump. Evan Ogden was worried that I still had my 390. Yes, I do still have the 390. So, yeah, other folks are agreeing that they were confused by Rickenbacker Rickenbacker, that they thought they were a German company, probably because the Beatles were playing them. Lennon was playing one during that period of time. JL Trem is saying he always winces at the refinishing. Gerson Alves is saying, do I know a guitar company from Brazil named Tajima? I don't know those. There's a bass company from down there that I've been following on Instagram. Beautiful, beautiful pieces. Headless, 5 strings, short scales, great things. Arrested Moran says, do you like Rickenbacker guitars with the toaster oven knobs? I love anything that's different than others. I love the knobs on old Ampeg B15 bass amps for the same reason. It's like nobody else used them. When I built my B15, which I recently sold, I had to source something that was close. The knobs were $5 a piece, and they were current. It's not like they were vintage. So that kind of stuff cracks me up. I talked to David Barber at Barber Electronics Pedals, an amazing pedal manufacturer, and he said that he's always searching for knobs that are affordable and high quality. I like it when you guys talk among yourselves. I really like that. Neil Elliott, Besson. Thanks for coming, man. It's coming to us from Spain, ladies and gentlemen. A-Face says, do I still have my Dano? No, I sold that in the last purge because I've been playing bass parts on something else. I just wasn't playing it. And so even though it wasn't an expensive guitar, it's gone now too. Sam A.C. Smith, what's your opinion on active versus passive? I was playing jazz during the whole active time. We're trying to. I've always been a passive bass sound guy. But I'm not a studio bass player, and I can't think of anybody who now currently really only plays an active bass. It seems like they'd have their passive basses, and everything's really gone very retro again. People are playing, P basses is the big thing again, I think, in studios and stuff. And it's probably retro sounds as well as anything else. So I think that probably I'm probably in a current fashionable opinion of liking the sound of passive pickups. Scott's got a theory. Scott Bogfoot's got a theory about the glow. Could be. Jason SpaceX saying thanks for the bass content. We're gonna do thanks. We're gonna do more. We're gonna do the Stingray for sure. I'm gonna do the Hofner 500. That'll be a long one. So Cameron Castanzaro says, what's your favorite bass? My favorite bass. I'm not a bass player. My favorite bass. I guess I'm talking about my favorite bass sound, because I'm a guitar player, is probably a jazz bass. And really, push comes to shove, probably a fretless jazz bass. Yeah, I love that sound. That's a great sound. And like I said, I love, although, Pino Palladino did all those records for other people playing his fretless Music Man. And really, that's the same sound. It's a great sound. Juju UK68. Do you think that the lack of finishes and production changes by Ric are why they're considered less vintage than older Fenders, Gibsons, and old Ric seems to be just an old Ric, particularly in pricing? Oh, that's interesting. Rare Rics are still rare, and they built way fewer guitars than anybody else. I think that I just looked up, when I was looking up these earlier today, I pulled up that guitar, the 4002 that I showed you guys. This guitar is on eBay. I pulled this picture, not eBay, it's on Reverb for $13,000. This is a 70s guitar. They made a very small number of them, and this is up for sale there for some really serious coin. So I got to try to keep up. Newt wants to know if I've ever thought about doing something on Epiphone. Yeah, Epiphone Casino has been on my list for a long time. I really, really like that guitar style. That's very similar to the 390. I can get a lot of casino kind of sounds out of my 390, very Gretschy almost. Krista's got an idea. Says, show idea. Do a short history on Boss pedals. Sure, they aren't special, but they are lasted for decades, and everyone has one. Just a thought. A history of Boss would be a very cool thing. And I don't know if the guys at that pedal show have done an overall. They went and visited the factory and met the actual people. I'm sure BB can throw it in the comments here. Yeah, I think Ric Basses are often people's sort of dream collectible piece. Dries Lambrecht says, as a guitarist, which instrument would enrich me more to take the time to learn? Drums or bass guitar? The answer is the piano. That's always my answer. I play just enough piano to do my music theory homework in college, badly, my dyslexic self. But I found piano opened me up the most. Having said that, because I was a music minor in college, not a major, they didn't make me learn all the instruments. And so for 2 years, when I was in my late 20s, I took drum lessons for 2 years and had drum sets until about 4 or 5 years ago. There is something deeply meditational about drums. I actually have a Roland Octopad in the other room still because I love putting on headphones and trying to settle into a groove, and playing that feels very meditational for me. I never found bass to be that for me. Bass for me always reminded me that I was a guitar player and that I should be playing music with other people and get my bass player in to play it. Like I said, if you want to hear somebody playing octave down bass parts on their guitar that you cannot tell, you should go listen to John Cordy's live stream, not his live streams, but his channel where he does all these tunes. It's incredible. Steve 56 Hemme says he saw somebody doing a show from Atlanta in a 5-watt World shirt. Yeah, that's Dave Honorato probably. You probably saw the video that he made with Rhett on things to do to keep your instruments up. It's had over 1 million views. And Dave's an incredible supporter. And what he doesn't know about vintage guitars is hardly worth knowing. He's been an incredible guy. Reed Dillashaw is asking if Ampeg's there for a short history. Yeah, I actually think there's probably at least two. Well, except, man, Reverb Rocket's amazing amplifier. Can you tell I still have amp lust? I played a Reverb Rocket. I use unusual tubes at Dan's in Dan Lurie's at FYD Amps in Burlington, Vermont years ago, and I'm still haunted by the reverb. There was it was like a swirling kind of reverb that I can't put into words. Obviously, it's just an amazing. Anyway, so that would be one. That would be an interesting guitar, or the V4. Because the Rolling Stones use those. But the SVT and the B15, the flip top, would be good. They're both that are on the list for short histories. Guppy Bill says, have the crushed pearl triangle inlays ever been reproduced on later or reissue models? I don't know, but I can tell you that Ron's Vintage, Ron, was kind enough to go through my video and help me out with some additional images where he thought that he had better examples, and he did in all cases. And he even caught that I had used a bass in the section where I was talking about crushed pearl. I'd used a bass that came later and didn't have the crushed pearl, and so he actually pointed me at some things and gave me better ones of that. A Sears and Roebuck instrument short history series would be awesome. In a way, that's the Dan Electro video, since they built the guitars for Silvertone through the really fun years of 50s and 60s. Jason Spacek saying Stingray. Yeah, we're going to do that. Those are heavy. Rick has a 5-string Stingray that must weigh 12 pounds at his studio in Atlanta. When I've been there, I've picked it up because it's a beautiful guitar with a really bird's-eyed neck, and then and this beautiful white body, and it just weighs a ton. David Casson saying, what do I know about Frank Brothers guitars? What I know, I learned from Zach Broyles at Mythos, because Zach played, I think they must have carried them at Carter, or he got one through. And he really liked it. But I will admit that he was talking about, the reason I remember it is he was talking about selling it. And Zach doesn't really flip guitars very much. I agree. I love the design. They're very cool. They seem like set neck, sort of Les Paul substitute kind of guitars, but they're handmade. I'm afraid that's the limits of my knowledge about those, David. Paul Trainer, BSC. Paul, what does BSC mean? You want me to do my Liverpool accent? Do my Beatles accent? No, I don't think I'll do that. I don't think we need to capture that for posterity. If we ever do a 5-Watt World meetup, I'll do more accents. Musicians are usually good at accents, is my experience. So, and really now, if you do an accent, you're almost always seen as, charged around race and gender and stuff. So it's like you can't really do those anymore. Thanks, Michael. Reminding everybody to hit the thumbs up. The Fender Basement is on the list for a short history. Alessandra Monroe is asking me what I use. I use a patch. I have multiple patches in my HX Effects that I use for bass that I actually worked on with John Cordy that I got from John, and then I've tweaked them. And then in the Stomp, since it has the bass models in it, it actually has a bass model of a B15, which makes sense since the Ampeg B15 is the most recorded bass amp of all time. So that's what I use. I pitch it down and then I send it through a bass amplifier model to do it. So that's what I do. Really, they're over on the Stomp because the HX doesn't have those. Dan Peacock's asking me if Josh did a history of Boss. I'm sure he did. I think he did a video called Why Boss is Best. There, that's impressive. It's pretty sad maybe when I remember what the other YouTubers' video titles are, but I am a student of the platform. Yep, yeah, Jim Woodard said yes, he did. What are my thoughts on the Gibson TD225? You got me there. I do not know that guitar. Pete Johnson says, you got to do with a short history of a pedal company. You got to do our former hometown heroes, MXR. Absolutely, yeah. Pete must remember that I went to school in Rochester. Scott Bachfoot says that he heard that 339s are being discontinued. I haven't heard that, but I haven't really been following what is getting cut from the catalog. BV saying that the guys that, he says he means the guys at that pedal show haven't done an overall one. And I was correct today that he is friends with Yoshi. And he says today is the boss, say that 3 times, the head of boss Yoshi's birthday. Yeah, BV, the stuff you know, man. I love that. Eastern Standard Time, yeah, which will change next week and confuse everybody again. Ben Tom says, too much gear, option paralysis. Good advice, I agree. David Anthony's asking for a history of Ovation. People are asking for that. They're, I'm not sure how many people know them still. Peter Huag says, have you tried or spoken to Al Cisneros about his bass? I didn't try. I have this thing about doing the short histories from research. I'm almost a little, like when I did a PRS, I'm working on a PRS video now on the bolt neck PRSs. And I I'm not that interested in talking to Paul about Paul's um, ideas about guitars and guitar building. That's obviously that's well documented. And so I try to do it one step away. I don't know if that's a misguided sense of journalism. I think I've had actually people that Perry, I will admit that it's Perry who tends to come up with the more heavy players, and Al Cisneros is a great example of, he throws this in the script. I go look it up and the guy's amazing. And I ended up listening to his music while I was doing some of the editing. But the fact is that, like I said, that's coming out of Perry's 32-year-old world, not my, or I don't know, do you have a birthday? Not my 61-year-old world. Although I've listened to a lot of out music in my time, that's for sure. Anyway. Scott Bogfoots is saying, is Ernie Ball a string maker that makes guitars, or a guitar company that also makes strings? Slinkies were they were a string maker that then eventually grew into a company that owns other companies and have taken them on because the original Ernie Ball Slinkies were from the 1960s. They were the ones who packaged them together when people were building their own sets with banjo strings. Conrad Yadzik, any thoughts on the Pathfinder 10 bass amp? I just am floored by the quality of the less expensive pieces these days. There's just so little junk anymore. I can't get over it. So I don't know that piece, but yeah. How does a B15 compare to a Mesa Walkabout? I haven't played a Mesa Walkabout. A B15 is a tube amp with a 6SL7 in the preamp, an octal preamp tube. The amp was designed very early by a guy named Jesse Oliver, and has a pair of 5881s, which are a sort of lower voltage 6L6 power tubes. Probably develops maybe 27 watts. 28 watts, has a direct out from the preamp, it's a very cool amp to have in your studio arsenal anyway, for a whole bunch of things. So sorry I can't answer that question about the Walkabout. Otto wants to know anything on SWR amps for bass. Back in the day, my bass player had one. It was an amazing sound. Yeah, I think that they were one of the really early big wattage answers. How do I rate Paul McCartney as a bass player? Wow. So my father was a high school art teacher. I was born in 1960. My dad was a high school art teacher until 1972. And I remember being in his classroom, after I got out of elementary school, and he let the kids play whatever. I remember hearing Aqualung there in that room, with the smell of, clay and paint. I remember hearing Captain America Calling, the Kinks. So, I mean, the Beatles were sort of soundtrack of my life. It's sort of like Jimi Hendrix. There was so much Jimi Hendrix around before I played guitar, I kind of burned out on him. And the Beatles were sort of that way too. I just remember Abbey Road being on the turntable for months and months in my life. So Paul McCartney played the bass parts that, I guess he kind of formed my sense of what a bass player should sound like in a pop context. So that's my wandering answer. Pavel Lukashevich from Poland. Great to see you again. My question is, why still the studio Fender Precision is used most? Why is it always the P bass? That's the truth. Because it sounds great. Fast Eddie wants to know when the last time I was in Rochester, when was the last time I was in a House of Guitars, and when was the last time you had a garbage plate at Nick Tahoe's? I'll do those in order. Last time I was in Rochester was not that long ago, because I had a guitar set up there that now has been since sold to Phil. I haven't been to the Hog in a long time, and I haven't been to Nick Tahoe's since college. But you're definitely pushing all the Rochester buttons there. I hope everybody, hundreds of people that are from Rochester on the stream, are digging those answers. Oh, thank Isaac Neninger tells us what a TD225 was. Cool. Another vote for the Mosrite history. Evan wants, I think you've asked for this before, a short history of Keith Williams. You're kind of getting that in little tiny bits and pieces in the introductions. Perry was throwing at me an idea earlier today that we should do an expanded versions, like the original drafts of all the introductions before we hack them back into something that's, short enough to keep people's attention. They're these little short stories from my life that are around gear. So it's interesting. It's just an idea at this point. But you're not going to be. You can write to me, Evan, or we'll get on a Skype call and I'll tell you my life history. I don't think I'll be making a video about that. Trainer actually is on the list as for a short history, especially since I spent so many years living in Vermont and saw so many Trainer amps coming over the border and getting played in bars there. They're beasts. They just never break down. It's interesting. I didn't, with everything I read, Tuesday is asking, are Rickenbacker guitars finished in poly? I didn't come across anything where they were talking about the finishes and the transition of the finishes. Everybody used a nitro finish, back in the day, and everybody seemed to transition to poly early in the 70s. But wow, I'm going to have to look that up. So see me back here on that Tuesday. I've been working way too hard lately, and I'll tell you the truth, I have not been out to a movie since before COVID. So on the top of my list, unsolicited here, is I'm a big science fiction nerd. So the Dune movie, which is getting great reviews, is highest on my list for getting out to see. Okay, David Casson says a garbage plate for the win. David's going to have to explain to me sometime how David knows what a Nick Tahoe's garbage plate is, unless that's a national thing that I'm unaware of, and you can get one in Brooklyn. Scott wants to know, Scott Bogfoot, can you do a video about all the tremolo systems and their stories beginning users? I try to just do those things in the context of the individual ones. Like when Gretsch started using Burns tremolos because Baldwin owned Burns or some version. No, it was the other way around. They were using them and then they switched and then they went back to the original Bigsby ones. Totally weird. But I don't see myself doing an individual one. James Jamerson, yeah, of course. William Ross says he's late. What's happening? Anyone mention Rick's Duff build quality? Okay, so what am I? I'm too much of an old guy to know what Duff is. Is this good or bad? Somebody help me. William, help me out. Are you saying that they're iffy? Are you saying that they're amazing? I know that a lot of their stuff is still being hand done. So Andy Mandiak, a short history of Rick Turner. Yeah, Turner's guitars. I actually quoted Turner. Turner was the guy that did the first PRS, I think it was like 87, 86, did the first review of a PRS Custom 24 in Guitar Player magazine. I remember reading about it and going, what the heck is this thing? The love child of a Gibson and a Strat, of a Les Paul and a Strat. And it was Rick Turner who wrote that, and he was floored. This guy says, you lived in Vermont, any chance you'll ever play there? I'm not even playing out here. So I don't really see myself taking it on the road. If I'm looking for a house out in Syracuse, and we'll be doing that actually over the weekend again while I'm working on the PRS script. By the way, everybody, I'm working on the bolt action, the history of the bolt action guitars, because I'm fascinated by the sort of split that the bolt action guitars created in their line now. Oh, thanks, John. J.L. Trump says that Duff is bad. It's a Britishism. If Britishism is a real thing. Albert Tremblay says, love the channel. Thanks, man. Music therapy. What's up, everybody? All right. So, okay. If everybody hasn't left or fallen asleep, how about a few questions to take us out of the hour here? William Ross, very British. You mean as in archaic? Is it something that's out of use? They have. McJames II says, I want to know why they haven't updated the Bigsby so it doesn't take a third arm to string it. They have done a version where it's easier to do it. But they also do the original style too. Fast Eddie 333. Yeah, get a good snowblower. I'm on that. I grew up on a farm. I got those connections. BV says he thinks the early Ricks were nitro. It's fairly common. Yeah, early they changed the finish to use conversion varnish, CV, which is a poly finish. Fifi, I love you, man. Ivan, could you remind which pedal videos you plan on doing? You mean short histories, Ivan? Definitely going to do one on Fuzzface, Crybaby, Rat. Those are the three big ones on my list right now. If I was overly nostalgic, I'd do one on the Distortion Plus, and I could roll it right into my history of MXR. That would be one. That was the first pedal I ever owned. I think a lot of people, that was their first one. K Major wants to know where I'm looking in Cuse. Everywhere. I just don't want to be that far out of town. I want to be able to get down to the Armory District to see people play. I ran into some great guys playing in an organ trio down there, and just trying to get to know the scene and get to know people there. I just want to be within an hour of the farm. My family is all here, and at the same time, I've always lived in college towns, and so someplace with a little better cell coverage than I have out here in the country. So Albert Tremblay says he got a hybrid Eden WT800. Do you know about that amp? I assume we're looking at something with it has a tube preamp and a Class D power amp probably. I don't know that, but hybrids are a really cool thing. Tommaso Procicciani. Yeah, somebody help me. Wants to know, and you guys can all jump in because I'll have my opinion, and then you'll have everybody else can jump in. I'm looking to get my first Strat, not first guitar, and since there are so many models and options, it's hard to choose. Do I have any pointers for less than $1,000? Well, it's well known, I think, that my favorite Strat is the Eric Johnson Strat, and if you get one where the nitro finish has taken some hits, and you're okay with that, you're pretty close to that. You might be looking at maybe prices currently are pushed up pretty much. But I got my really cherry one a few years ago for $1,350. I mean, absolutely cherry with a great neck, with a flamey neck. So I would steer you in that direction. Besides that, I'm not the Strat guy. I'm actually not a Strat guy. Music therapy, thanks, man. Just because you Ryoc. I think we're dealing typos, but when you're giving me money, I like that. That's good. Chris Eck, Metal Zone short history. Maybe like everybody, all the music YouTubers could have a Metal Tone month. We could do next Halloween maybe, or April Fool's Day. To be honest, there was a time when I owned a Metal Zone, and I've talked to David Barber about this. I find this is true of high gain pedals. You set the gain on a reasonable level, and then you turn the guitar down. And there's so much harmonic content added. My other favorite one for doing that was a Sir Riot pedal, where you'd barely have the gain on and you'd be using it as a boost, but it was just adding all this really wonderful dimension, especially to like single coils. That was very cool. Sorry I wasn't more help on the Strat. I have kind of a limited scope on Strats. Have I seen the V4 Kraken amp, the one with the built-in 2 notes reactive load? What are your thoughts on amps like that? Well, Josh, you might know that I actually did a video on the Rev D series, the 20 series amps, which are the first ones to have it embedded. I actually didn't know that the new Kraken had a 2 notes embedded load. I'm not surprised. Martin is a really innovative guy. I'm not surprised that he didn't work those in. Firm Cardenas asked about Music Man. Yeah, we talked about that. We're going to be doing a short history on those probably next year. This guy is up in Vermont, says, keep it up. Thanks, man. All right. I guess he's telling me that it's 5 o'clock. a short history of Magnetone amps, Univibe history. Yeah, Univibe would be a good one for the list. That is a good idea. So, all right, with that, I'll thank BV for answering the questions that only BV's Esoterica knows. And thank you to him all the way to Switzerland. I always get that wrong, so I got that right today. Again, thank you guys for being here, and thanks so much for all the great questions and for hanging out. Thanks for watching the stuff, and thanks, in advance for the support on Patreon or the store or the short histories or the Stomp preset pack, whatever you can do helps out. It keeps us going. I really appreciate it. All right. I will try to do this without the mic drop endings I'm used to. I'm going to play some music and play us out. Thanks a lot.